It's crazy to think that 70% of heirs and people receiving money that moves from one generation to the next changes their financial advisor. 70%. That means 70% of your client base lost. And that's probably one of the biggest risks that we sit with, amongst many other things. And I'm looking forward this morning to have this conversation with my special guest all the way from Ireland, Mark Hedderman. And we're going to get into that. And also we're going to turn the tables a little bit on ourselves as well and look in the mirror and also answer a few questions from there. So looking forward to a fantastic episode. Welcome to PROpulsion, the weekly show for financial planners and advisors who want to build better, more successful businesses. I'm your host, Francois, and every week we dive into the practical strategies that matter, from growing your client base and improving your services to developing yourself and your team. Whether you're running your own practice or you're part of a larger firm, you are guaranteed to find actionable insights to help your business thrive. So with that, welcome, and let's get into today's episode. This morning is Mark Hedderman. Mark is from Ireland. He is president of the LIA, which is one of the education bodies over there, representing more than 12,000 financial professionals, and he serves as a board director of Financial Planners of Ireland. He is also the CEO of Hedderman Financial Solutions, a second-generation family firm known for its clear, values-driven approach to financial planning. And I think something that's missing from there is the gentlemanliness of this man, like you will come to see in a minute. But Mark is a respected international speaker and a strong advocate for raising professional standards, hence why we connected, and promoting a broader view of the financial advice landscape. So, Mark, welcome to PROpulsion Live. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, Francois, it's a pleasure. It's so good to see you as well, buddy. And thanks so much. So delighted to connect with yourself and the South African community again.
Awesome. And so some good news that came about is that not only will we see you on screen, we will pretty much soon in September have the opportunity to see you in person. Oh, October. When is it? I think it's October.
Yeah,
right?
the 7th and 8th of October. So thanks again to Leilani and all the team at FPI South Africa. So I'll be joining the FPI annual convention in Cape Town, in Century City. Hopefully on day 2, I'll be speaking at the event around succession planning. So we ran a forum for some CFPs about 2 weeks ago for our South African colleagues. That seemed to go down well. So really delighted to make a return trip to South Africa. I'm so in so much admiration and respect for what you guys are doing, leading the profession from a global perspective. So I'm humbled, to be honest, to have an opportunity to come back and delighted to come to beautiful Cape Town again for a second trip.
Yeah, awesome. And also, I would stand to argue, Mark, that if it wasn't for the fact that the conference was happening in Cape Town, you would have said no. You would not wanted to go to Joburg. It's only because it's in Cape Town. I'm here. Eden is here. There's a few people here who you know, and that was the reason.
Yeah, exactly. I ran my good friend Eden Kift, who I had to ring straight away to tell him I was coming back. So he was like, well, where do you want to go? Do you want to have a steak? Do you want to have this? I was like, Eden, it's not till October. So we've lots of time. But yes, we will go for steaks and we will go for red wine and Stellenbosch.
Now we will welcome you with open arms. We'll look after you nicely. So you will have a fabulous time. And we're looking forward to hear everything that you've got to share. But lots of sleepless nights of excitement between now and then. But for now, let's get into our conversation this morning. So this morning, Mark and I are going to talk a little bit about intergenerational wealth transfer. But not only, there's lots have been said about this, and this is a topic that has now been sort of spoken about quite a bit here in South Africa as well. And it's something that's top of mind for a lot of people. But we're going to take it one step further than that. And I'm going to just leave it hanging there for a moment because we'll come back to that. But Mark, let's get into this, because this is something you're quite passionate about and something that you research quite a bit, and obviously you are giving advice on the ground as well. And the fact is that we are in the middle of the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in the history of humankind. This change that's taking place. What does this mean in practical terms from your point of view for financial planners today?
It's a super question, and I think that has to be married back to each individual client and their client's family that you're working with. And one of the areas that we're exploring here is when there's a transfer of wealth from one generation to the next, is there a corresponding transfer of the morality and values of the individual who've issued the money? So the difficult part around this, Francois, is we're dealing with a generation who are now stepping into their new season in retirement, particularly in places like Ireland, where there is no major past experience in terms of dealing with this level of wealth. And as a result of that, that tends to come with a lot of issues around, well, what do you do with it? Moving from a spender to a saver mindset, and also getting out of the habit of treating the assets like they're your children and not your own. So this is something that I don't think there's an overnight solve to this. And I know a lot of people are seeing this transfer wealth as a massive opportunity. But I think we probably have to take a stand back, first of all, and work out a game plan, because albeit this is going from parent to child in a lot of cases, you are dealing with a very different personality type, and you're dealing with a very different generation of individual whose needs and expectations of us as financial planners is radically different than what has come before with their parents. So business as usual for the new generation and next generation is no longer going to be fit for purpose. And as a result, I think it's incredibly important for us as financial planners, first of all, to remain relevant and of value, but secondly, to actually be able to deliver that value to this next generation. And I think it's going to take a huge amount of work and a lot of overhauling of our practices to ensure that we're fit for purpose for the next generation.
Yeah, it's quite a interesting times that we are definitely moving into. And one of the biggest, and I think you started to touch on this, you said that they have a very different expectation and have a very different view of life, and they have different things that are important to them. And the stats are showing at this point in time, even though this shift is still going to happen until 2046 or something. So there's still a lot of this change that's going to come. But I think the stats at the moment is saying something like 70% of the heirs change the advisor. So when the children, for example, get the money or the properties or whatever, they tend to walk away from the existing advisor that helped their parents and go find someone else. Why does that keep on happening? Can we delve a little bit deeper into that, Mark? As I said, I think you already started to allude to that, but what are the reasons why they do that?
Yeah, it's an area, Francois, where like I'm doing some work next month with the Financial Advice Association in New Zealand. So I'm speaking in Auckland about this very topic. And what I kind of want to open that is with posing two questions to the audience is, if you took your top 20 clients as they stand, and if those top 20 clients transferred assets to the next generation, do you expect that any of the next generation would actually call you? And the second question is that if pressed, would any of those children in fact know who you are and what role you've played in their parents and their families' lives over the last 2 or 3 decades? So the assumption is the sweat equity that we've poured in to the first generation, for example, will naturally carry through to the next. And unfortunately, that just isn't the case. In most instances, we as the financial planners sit in the background and we're not really at the forefront of their mind in any way, shape or form, on the basis that most of the next generation potentially believe that our role is maybe made redundant by AI tools and utilizing AI software to basically act as their financial planner. We probably, need to ascertain, first of all, how do we get in front of them, and how do we play an important role in their lives to be more than just this sort of a product seller, for example. And one of the things and mantras we push in our own firm, particularly when we're talking to our clients, is that money is really only the vehicle, it's not the outcome. So our role is trying to assist and craft a journey to allow our clients truly become who they always wanted to be. And we talk about this idea of putting ourselves in the position where loads of our meetings result in clients saying, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have, and that might be, I wouldn't have gone and had the dream holiday, or I wouldn't have gone and invested and done something correct, or I wouldn't have discovered and gone for that medical treatment or got that medical check and discovered that I had some form of cancer, for example. So we really wanted to put ourselves in a position that our value is accruing beyond the simple transaction of financial plans. And when that comes to younger clients and the next generation, like fundamentally, the products themselves tend to hold considerably less value for them than it did for previous generations. And again, I kind of worry for a lot of, like, I keep feeling like I'm in this younger category, but I think those days are gone past. So it's that generation down now who are really looking for, financial clarity. They're looking for openness and vulnerability from us as advisors as well. So this idea of having kind of shared sentiment, hey, we've been where you were, we've made some mistakes, here's how we found our way out of these, and maybe we can build some specific preventative measures to prevent you guys from going down that. One of the big things as well is I think that they're really, really looking for, and we use this analogy about, we need to move from a general practitioner mindset to a consultant. And the basis of this is most of their parents may have had one or two specific careers over their lifetime, a maximum. They might have sat in a company for 40 years, worked really hard, but that was it. And it's very clean. Looking at the studies is that most Gen Zers now may have 11 or 12 different careers over a lifetime. That requires a totally different form of advice now, more led by a consultancy basis, and it needs to be much more higher touch and much more engaged. So I think the first starting point here is getting face time and trying to craft an ability. And we can go into this at a deeper level, Francois, but I think it's just, you need to be known by these next generation, and they need to know that you see and understand who they are and who they want to become.
Yeah. And is that something that we are getting wrong, Mark, where we don't engage with the children, we don't speak to them for whatever reason that may be? I mean, is that because, is it just a simple thing that, maybe we just don't think about it and we don't focus on it, or we're not intentional about it? Or is it that there is a disconnect between us and the children, and it is a difficult thing to breach? So just maybe, what are we getting wrong from that point of view?
Well, for most established businesses, they see that younger generation of clients as not being a source of strong remuneration earlier on. So in a way, your objective, I think, is really looking at, you're sowing the seeds for your practice for the next 20 years. And that, like with anything, when you plant a tree, it has to be tended and minded. And the real value isn't going to accrue until some point in the future. You don't know when exactly it's going to come, but it will come at some point. So I think we nearly need to set aside some time and allocation of budget that, yes, we will be working with this next generation, and we are not going to be remunerated from a monetary sense initially. And again, some of these ideas where we might talk to existing clients and say, hey, we really want to help steer your children to ensure they don't make any mistakes. And as a result of that, we're happy to onboard them as part of a certain part of our client bank on a no fee basis until they reach age 30, as an example. So I think there has to be a degree of reciprocation, because given how strong markets have been and how much money has been washing around the global economy for the last number of years, we have to be very conscious as financial planners to not take that for granted, and that there are other areas beyond the practice that we need to give consideration to ensure we're getting out in front of this next generation. They're not going to deal with this sense of hierarchy either. I don't think they want to come in, and the idea that we have multiple CFP plaques and all these bits on the wall, it just doesn't seem to hold stock and value with them. And my worry in a way is that for a lot of them, there are going to be needs, and psychological needs even alone, that they will present that have never really been on our radar before. which means we as financial planners, we need to kind of educate ourselves on how we can act more as behavioral finance specialists, as psychologists, as coaches, rather than just purely in a transaction space where, hey, we know these products inside out. AI is going to eat us alive if that's our game setting, in terms of where we can feel we can add value. So we need to move into those other areas and ensure that we're crafting that these next generation feel that they're part of their own tribe and that they have a trusted source that they can come and speak to.
If somebody wants to start, because this is something that I've spoken a lot about in the past, but if a financial planner sits here listening to us and go, sure, yeah, I need to have a plan to engage the younger generation. And sometimes that younger generation is 40 already. It's not to say that they are 18 or 20, right? It's just that my clients are 75, 80, and I've never thought of talking to the children or building a relationship with the children from that point of view. Do you have any advice of where people can start, let's say in the next 90 days or so? What can they do in order to have that conversation and to connect with those children or the next generation or the heirs of their own clients?
I think initially the key is with your existing clients is you got to start pushing on pain points that they don't realize exist. And these are areas around, well, what if you're incapacitated tomorrow? Who is there to look after the estate? Is your will in place correctly? Is there an enduring power of attorney? Do you have a specialist team around you who can assist from a legal and tax perspective? Or are you comfortable for that legacy to be pushed for your children to have to deal with? And most parents that we talk to are like, their one resounding feature is, hey, I don't want to be a burden to my kids. So we need to influence it initially at a parent's level to say, okay, if that's the case, then we need to sit down and have what we call a family meeting. And the family meeting is a kind of open-ended workshop that you hold with the parents and the next generation. Say, hey, we're going to sit down without an agenda and we're going to have a very open and frank conversation about where we envisage the next 10, 15, 20 years looking like for you guys as a family. But we're also going to bring into play certain devil's advocate role around if circumstances change and derail, how are the family prepared to undertake these monumental changes in their circumstances? So offering that, first of all, as a open-ended, not a push of products, but just a chat, where are your concerns and worries, tends to be a great opening gambit to highlight your value back to the next generation and also outline the fact, coming back to our earlier point, that they are seen and understood. Because that might branch into, normally most of those meetings are the children who do tend to be, say, in their 30s or 40s at that point are saying, oh, do you know, I have a couple of queries around personally related stuff that for us, it's quite easy to answer and give them not full solutions to, but mostly give them an impression that there's an outline that we can assist. So you're reinforcing our value without really having huge level of input. And our stock, as a result, with both parents and the next generation, shoots through the result of taking that time to sit down over a cup of coffee and just have a very open chat.
No, I quite like the idea of an open chat, just no agenda, just have a conversation about what things might look like. But then also, on the other hand, you know, the younger the generations become, I don't know about Gen X, right? So we probably Gen X both. I am, I assume you are too. And I don't know so much if it applies to us. We're a weird generation where we sit somewhere in the middle where we're not bothered by stuff. Let's just get on with life, right? But you find that sort of the younger generations, they start looking more at values and purpose-led things that they want to do. There's got to be a specific purpose. There are things they don't want to invest in anymore. They're very conscious about a lot of things that for the older generations, if I might put it that way, was not such a big deal and wasn't so important. They worried about other things. So then even in that conversation where you have the whole family, you just have a family discussion, how do you then adjust the conversation to be also to take those things into account and to be more in line with what I don't want to say what they want to hear, but you know, sort of how do you make sure that you also talk to them and what's important to them in that same meeting, or do you have separate meetings with them? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, it's a great question, Francois, and it's probably, again, it has to be relatively bespoke, and I think, storytelling is an incredible way to help people see and understand what this looks like, and being able to tell, without disclosing personal details, obviously other narratives and cases that you've been involved and we've been involved in as financial planners where things have gone wrong, is, I think, really where people buy in and realize that they need to do something. So on the basis that you completely disarm them initially by saying, hey, we're going to have an ask anything session. It's totally complimentary. It's going to be taken as our time. And that is, and be open to say, hey, we want to cover your fears, your expectations. We want to talk about your own value set. And if there's a specific family value set that's there, we also want to talk about our emotional preparedness. So are we emotionally prepared that tomorrow's circumstances could be changed, or one of the 5 or 6 people who were sitting at the table are no longer there? So we do need to probe as planners and ascertain how people will react if we said, if mum or dad aren't sitting at this table. We need to obviously, first of all, get into our mind that at some point in the future that's going to happen. And we need to begin building our own armor around getting ourselves used to that, and also being aware of the fact that there will be fallout as a result. Now, we can prep and plan for that today with a trusted expert who cares about you and your family, or you can do it when you're standing by the graveside and kind of work out as you're heading back to the hotel or whatever, the restaurant, to say, oh my God, where does this even start? How do we turn? Whilst also dealing with the emotional fallout. So we always kind of use an analogy that we can't replace or unburden the emotional loss of a family member, but we can certainly ensure that all the other elements are taken care of, that's the only thing that they have to worry about going forward. I think when you push that type of language and you have that conversation with people, you pick up pretty quickly who shares your own values, ethics, and morality. And it allows, it effectively also is a precursor to allow the financial planner to decide, hey, yeah, there is going to be a transfer of wealth, but are the next generation people that I honestly can share the same values with, and people that I want to work with? Because we can't be led, we can't let the tail wag the dog that, hey, there's assets here. We got to realize for our own selves who is taking up bandwidth in our own mind that really shouldn't be on the pitch, and who's maybe restricting our ability to be the best financial planners we can be for other clients. So not only is it preparing the next generation for who we are, how we operate, and how much we care about them, it's allowing us at that stage prep in our own mind, are the next generation fit for purpose to get in the door of HFS, for example? Because we the value set has changed, whereby in the past, because it was a transaction-based model, we felt we needed to go out there and speak to everybody possible. And I think because of how complex society is and how portable people are moving around the world, you and I have spoken again about the amount of South African people who are now living in Ireland. And of course, the complexities that come with that. So our role has never had greater value. So we need to change the narrative slightly of who needs more in this relationship and who can add the most value. And because our services are going to be so highly sought after, it's okay as part of some of those meetings to push back a little bit and say, hey, we only work with a specific number of people. The rationale for that is we want to build very deep and meaningful relationship with them over multi-generations. But if we find that we work with people who pose a threat to our existing clients, our team, or ourselves personally as financial planners, we'll very, very politely ask them or advise them that we're not the right fit for them as a team. So I think this is a real good precursor, not only for the family, but for the advisor themselves to work out, hey, does this transfer of wealth look like the right fit for us as part of the next generation being clients of ours?
Yeah. And it's like the one thing that I picked up with our time on Necker is that, and this is something, and you're talking about it was very transaction focused and then moving to some other things that's important. And in the past, we used to plan for inheritance. So don't pay tax, minimize the tax, make sure things are protected, make sure that they get it. But I could gather also from all those conversations that we all had is that it's more about legacy today than it is about inheritance. It is not about what do they get. It's almost like might sound like the same thing, but what do we give them So what values are we passing on? So it's the things beyond the assets that are really important to a lot of people at this point in time. A lot of people have built, something really significant for the first time in many families, and they want to make sure that it doesn't spoil the children, or it doesn't, become like a bad thing for the children, that it's actually that they can build on top of that. So there's the legacy planning, and then there's also the how do you take care of those, because now you become a steward for that money. It's not yours, or that wealth, or those assets, whatever it is. And now you're just a steward for that. And how do you now pass on a legacy and good governance and all of that to your children? So it becomes something that, is really, really important. And I guess having those sorts of conversations, do you think that's something that comes natural to planners, or do you think it's something we need to actively work on and upskill ourselves on?
I don't think it comes naturally, because I think it's a space that most of us haven't had to deal with previously. Certainly in Ireland, as I said, this is probably the first generation where real assets have actually been transferred. And I think to help planners get a measure of this thing, it's about the quality of the question that's being posed, particularly for the next generation. And that open-ended meeting allows us the opportunity to have a handful of our own questions for them. And we, as you touched upon, a great thing there is that the value set is very different to the asset being transferred. So having an open question like, well, specifically for you as the next gen, what does financial independence mean for you? It's a very open-ended question, and it gives you a flavor straight away as an indication of a reality set of what that next gen views as being financially independent. Again, other questions like, what worries you the most about your financial life? The realistic thing about this is that if we can sit back and listen and really hear what they're saying, it's more than likely a question that's never really been posed to these individuals before. And I think another couple others, like, what did you learn about money growing up? And if they've grown up in a household where, exactly as you said, they might have been spoiled, if we can sit back and ascertain straight away that there's that sort of sense of, entitlement, then again, are we well suited to work with them? And these are set criteria questions that you could just have as part of our armory and be raised in any meeting. And I think probably the most important question is, what are your expectations of us? The reality of that is that if they're coming back and saying, well, my buddies are all invested in insert whatever alternative cryptocurrency and they made a return of 40% last year, my expectation of you is that you're going to do something similar. That's where we have to pull up the handbrake and really give them the kind of reality check of what our actual role is, versus, their assumption that we are investment advisors. Because I know with interest that our colleagues, when we were in Necker, our US colleagues, most of them are what are called RIAs, or registered investment advisors. And I think that's very restrictive. Like, I even believe the term, like, obviously myself and yourself, Francois, are certified financial planners, but my sense of this is that even that concept of a financial planner is not broad enough to cover what we're currently doing, and most certainly isn't going to be broad enough to cover where we are going as a profession. So planners need to get to grips with the fact that the game is changing underneath us. And not dissimilar, for you, use a rugby trope, and we looked at the changes that Razzie has brought in with the box, with the bomb squad. We rolled the clock back 10 years, and that concept of the split bench with that pack of absolute beasts coming off 45, 50 minutes into the game was unheard of. But Razzie is a visionary in the rugby sense and saw way ahead of the time. And we saw how World Rugby, for example, moved to emulate what South Africa did from a rugby sense. What you and I are talking about here is potentially the start of the framework of making that shift away. I don't mean away from financial planning specifically, but our conversations and the depth of our service proposition has to be deeper. We're working internally on a model we've called Wealth Care, which we believe goes beyond the financial element. And we're doing it for two reasons. A, we live in a very small country that has a village mindset. And we feel that we have to be at the forefront to assist our compatriots around Ireland as much as we can to move the needle forward for us as a society. But secondly, we feel if we don't make this move, that our role will be diminished really, really quickly by the increased use of AI tools, that we as financial planners, we will go the way potentially of other professional services where our value set has been eroded if we don't expand our mindset beyond that sense of, well, we just deliver on the products and we deliver at retirement and, hey, go and have a great journey. I just think it's not to say that that's not good enough. I know people are working really, really hard, but I just feel the next generation of clients, that's not going to tick the boxes for them in order to keep us on the pitch as their trusted resource as financial planners.
Some really, really important stuff there, Mark. So I want to continue this conversation, but in a little bit different way. And I want to take the mirror and just turn it on ourselves, just for the last bit of this conversation.
Not for too long. Don't turn it on us for too long.
We only left like a quarter of the show left just for this. Yeah. So we only spend 25% of our time on this. But talking about legacy planning and transfer of ownership and all of that stuff, good governance, all of that. And probably most of the people listening to us are 55 or older, according to the stats. Yet in our own practices or our own businesses, we have not really made the effort to get formal succession plans. And what I mean with that, I just want to define that before I ask you the question. So in a lot of cases, so in South Africa, one of the requirements are that you must have a succession plan. Okay, so it's a tick box. I have an agreement with Mark. We sign something. If something happens to me, Mark takes over. But that's not real succession. That's not what real succession looks like. And you're now second generation in your firm. So you and your brother took over. This is a family-owned business, so you took this over from your dad, if I've got my facts right. But you're more than welcome to set me straight. But I mean, you've gone through what does that look like when you do succession well, and what was the trials and tribulations and all of that kind of stuff. So this is something that's really important, right? Like, why is this still an issue where we don't spend time on this? Why do most advisors feel like, I can't find the right fit? This is, I'm just going to stay here until I die, and then, the business must die with me. Whatever that mindset is, like, why do you think like this is still such a big issue, even though it's been a big talking point for so many years now?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question. And just in respect of our own circumstances, it was myself and my two brothers, Ian and Luke, who took over from both of our parents. So we were in quite a unique position whereby both my dad, myself, Ian and Luke are active CFPs. And my mum, in fairness, who didn't do the qualification but had to live through the four of us going through it, is probably arguably the most qualified CFP of the lot. It's a hard one to answer, and I think the difficulty in a way is the way most of us were trained was in a hunter-gatherer mindset for our businesses. And arguably where that leaves us is 99% of people active in this profession are incredible advisors, and they're very, very bad business owners potentially, or not good or not trained to be business owners, because the mindset is, hey, you have to get out every year and your slate on the 1st of January is zero. Now get out and get more clients and add more policies and products to the firm. So this is something that we sat down in, I think, roughly about 2016 to have a conversation about, which was, what does the direction of travel of this business look like? How do we craft a strategy that allows a seamless and phased exit for my parents? Now, it's slightly different for us because it was an easier conversation to have as a family on the basis that there was almost an automatic inclination that myself and my two younger brothers would be the ones taking over the business. So I agree that this is it. We might have had a smoother run at this than, let's say, a business owner who has maybe a generational 2 advisor there, but they're not related. I think one of the difficulties as well in that sense, when you move it outside the family structure, is that in a lot of cases, the G2 advisors that are coming along are maybe not getting sovereignty in terms of their own role within the firm. And that instead of them, coming in and tending a farm and tending one field, as an example, they're being sent out to utilize that hunter-gatherer mindset, which is, hey, go into your rugby clubs, go into your sports clubs, go into your school network and bring in lots of new clients. Nobody is sitting back to say, what is the right number of clients? What does the service proposition look like for those clients that we can deliver on a respectable basis? Have we phased those and tiered the clients? So one of the areas that we did is, rather than phasing the client bank based on assets or AUM or income, we tiered the client based on life stage. So we have 3 various tiers within the company, and that's tiered based on the life stage of where the client is at. So we have those who are 5 years out and into post-retirement. We have the mid-tier then, who are those who may be similar to yourself, Francois, where the family is somewhat raised, they're out on their own, and you and your wife are kind of getting your lives back together and going, okay, we have a degree of freedom. What does our next 10 years look like? And then you have the phase tier 3, which is my age and down, who have small children, who hair is falling out and graying rapidly, and they're thinking to themselves, how do we even, if we get 3 hours of sleep a night, it's bliss. So I think for most firms, the value add of sitting down and locking out a diary of a 2 or 3 day spell every month to sit and work out who they want to be and where this direction of travel is going. If you don't have a distinct, and you're absolutely right, that succession plan of Francois saying, hey, if I kick the bucket, my book passes to Mark, that's off the wall, because in a way that's going to sink our ship. Because if your 400 clients drop into my firm, and your investment strategy and service proposition and value basis is totally different to what I operate as my firm, the outcome there is going to be really, really detrimental. So I think it's incumbent on advisors, particularly those around that average age of 55, is the right time to start exploring and having this conversation. And I know a lot of people might be sitting here and going, that's very easy for Mark to say. He's 40, he's inherited this business. We were really conscious of this. We're already crafting our revised succession plan, Francois, for what our business looks like with our younger G2 advisors. I'm CEO today, and I've been CEO of the business from May of 2021. The likelihood is I probably won't be CEO of the business in 3 or 4 years' time. And the reality is we're already crafting that succession plan, because I've already analysed the fact that I will become an impediment to success and innovation within this firm. I'm in the business 15 years, but I know it's now time to allow some of the next generation with their ideas and aptitudes to come through. So as they move through their education journey, we want them to come out and have a degree of sovereignty in terms of what the practice should look like. And we're very open to having those conversations. So it comes back to how we deal with the next generation of clients. Sitting down and telling stories and asking the right question to actually get a framework of, hey, what do we all want out of this? We've sat down over the course of the last year and decided as a business, and that's our 5 full-time staff who range in age from 25 to 42. We've decided that we all are passionately engaged in the business and want to stay in it for the next 25 years. We want this to be a multi-generational business. But in order for us to do that, the business has to be shaped to fit the needs of each of our full-time staff members. That can't be totally led by me as the CEO saying, hey guys, I'm really into X, Y, and Z, therefore we're only going to pursue that. So I believe giving some degree of sovereignty back to your next gen is really going to help craft and allow you to have that next stage of a conversation around where the business goes, allowing maybe for their financial event at some point in the future, but not just tipping along and saying, hey, everything will be fine, we'll just keep working and servicing the clients. You got to take a step back and actually tend and manage this farm at some point, because otherwise it'll end up eating you alive.
Look, I mean, this is actually such a deep conversation for us to have. I mean, you touched on so many important points, Mark. So we will have a follow-up discussion, a part 2 to this, because there's lots that I want to unpack around that, because different people have different views. Something that's definitely, I would assume it's also happening in your part of the world, but definitely in places like the UK and America and Canada and everywhere, is this consolidation where, a lot of private equity are buying up firms and aggregating them and doing things like that. So a lot of people who've built practices are moving into those structures. But for those that, like you, have really built businesses around this as a long-term vision. You're building something that will live beyond yourself and hopefully beyond a few generations. I mean, that's the kind of impact that we're trying to have, and those are two very different conversations to have. So, if it's okay, if we have your blessing, I would like to have you back and for us to continue that conversation, to unpack that, because we've just run out of time. But as in closing, Mark, if there's anything that you want to leave the audience with to say, and literally in a minute, like if you want to leave them, or what can you leave them with to say, if you want to go from, we know all this stuff, but you need to do it now, which is our theme, from knowing to doing. Like, what would you say? Go and do this year, 2026.
Yeah, look, it's a lovely way to finish, and we'll definitely come back on that other piece, because that private equity piece is playing a massive role in Ireland at the moment, and I'd have serious concerns over what the shape of advice looks like for the communities here based on that approach. But look, my take on this to close, Francois, is that I really believe that the firms that are really going to thrive over the next, let's say, 20 years or so are going to be the ones that actually understand the most simplest piece. And the simple piece is that belonging is going to be stronger than inheritance. And we need to make sure that the firms that are out there have made room at the table for the next generation of clients to come along and feel like they can inherit that seat. Because if we're not prepping and getting ourselves ready for that, someone else is going to set a seat at their table for those clients to go elsewhere. So the action point to take away is just be open to having that conversation with the broader family unit. And it doesn't require you to have a huge overarching strategy. It's sitting down and having prepped for that meeting 3 or 4 high value questions, like what we touched upon earlier on, will totally change your dynamic and how they view you as their financial planner. This all of a sudden is going to open you up to a new world, and they're going to come away and consider, like, how could we even envisage working with somebody else? We work with somebody who cares so much about us and the well-being of our family. So I think that's one deliberate action to take over the next 30 days, is just make your firm visible to the next generation. And if that's pushing some content towards them, maybe going out and analyzing whether it might be of value to run a client event, or at the very simple level, offer to your existing clients as they're coming into meetings, would they like their sons and daughters to be part of that meeting for an Ask Anything session? Try that. See how you go. We've been doing it for the last year or so, and I'm just trying this. And I feel like our clients feel like we're adding so much additional value. They felt like and we asked them, they're like, we were uncertain. We didn't know if you were open to doing this. And we were kicking ourselves going, God, we should have been doing this for so much longer. So don't expect that on an ad hoc basis. They will ask, get out there and ask them.
Absolutely brilliant. Marky, that was brilliant. I'm looking forward to part 2 of this. We will definitely schedule time with you. Even if we have this conversation over a few glasses of wine here in Cape Town, we will record that, and they will be proof.
That'll be lekker.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you for everything that you do for the profession globally. Not only in Ireland, you do a lot there, but you also do a lot globally. So thank you very much for that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I look forward to having you back very, very soon. Thank you so much.
It's a privilege, Francois. And again, just to reiterate how humbled I am to know somebody of your caliber and get to spend time with you while we're in Necker. But the excitement now of coming back to South Africa and seeing yourself, and I don't want to overstate this, but we are so taken by how you guys operate, and so excited to come back. So it's such a pleasure and a privilege to get a chance to have a conversation with you. And whatever we can do, as I said, when we're on the FPI forum, for any advisors in South Africa who want to have a deeper conversation with this, or just have a question, please feel free to reach out. Like, we are very much an open book. We understand how little of this universe we even understand ourselves. So the power of global collaboration just means we're delivering such better outcomes to our communities. And I couldn't be more privileged to be part of what's such a valuable profession. And dealing with the likes of yourselves has been just such a great step forward, and just showing us how much value can be added to the people around us.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure.
Here we go. With that, what a fantastic guy. Thank you very much, Mark, once again for your time and your insights. Hopefully it was worth your extra 5 minutes on here. We run over time a little bit. That's how it goes. But looking forward to next week. We'll be back same time, same place, 8 o'clock next week, Friday. Come and join us. Until then, stay safe, be blessed, and prosper, and stay curious. Thanks for joining us on Propulsion. If you found value in today's episode, then there's plenty more where this came from. You can find all our previous episodes right here on the podcast, as well as on our YouTube channel. And talking about the YouTube channel, we go live every single Friday at 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. and we host many different guests, and we also talk about very interesting topics. And on the live show, there's also some incredible segments hosted by some of the most well-known and influential financial planning professionals. So you are most welcome to join us every single Friday. Put it in your diary and we will see you there. And on that note, also please do check out propulsion.co.za/community for all of the goodness and learn more about how you can become part of our amazing community and how that would benefit you, your business, and your career. So on that note, stay curious and keep raising the bar.